Welcome, everyone. I'm Love Basiliote, the Executive Director of Philippine Business for Education, your moderator for today. We would like to give our special thanks to Globe for sponsoring Zoom for this webinar. Before we begin, we just have a few reminders. Number one, for our guests, please sign in with the email you typed in the registration form. Please make sure that your name is displayed in first, last name format. Number two, this session will be recorded for documentation purposes. Your microphones and camera will be automatically turned off as you enter. Questions may be asked through the Q&A chat box and will be answered during the open forum. These will be queued by staffers. Click the raise hand button during the open forum if you wish to ask your question live. Once you are recognized by the moderator, you may turn on your microphone or camera and speak. Thank you. We will begin shortly. Once again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second ABAC Philippines Forum entitled From Physical to Virtual Schools, the Education Sector Response to the COVID-19 Pandemic. With less than 2 weeks before classes resume, this topic is relevant and timely for all students and teachers in the audience today. To all the educators, school representatives, guests from the private sector and government, welcome and thank you for joining us in this event. I am pleased to share that we have with us this afternoon Mr. Tomas Alcantara, ABAC Chair, Mr. Joharia Wahab, Brunei Ambassador to the Philippines, and Representative Jocelyn Lim Kai Chong, Member of the House of Representatives. To start off this event and deliver the opening remarks, we have Mr. Bill Luz, the Associate Director of Ayala Corporation, Chief Resilience Officer and Advisor of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, and member of the APEC Business Advisory Council Philippines. He served as the private sector co-chairman of the National Competitiveness Council, a public-private council that develops strategies for the long-term competitiveness of the Philippines through policy reforms, project implementation, institution building, and performance monitoring. Let us all welcome Bill Luz.
Thank you, Love, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second ABAC Philippines Forum, this one on education entitled From Physical to Virtual Schools, the education sector's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. With 1.6 billion children affected by school closures across the world, the education sector is finding alternative learning methods to ensure continuity and sustain the quality of education. Since student safety and well-being remains a top priority for our educators and government in this time of COVID-19, education is now delivered online and learning continues amidst the pandemic. Department of Education has rolled out a learning continuity plan which seeks to explore multiple distance learning modalities for both students and educators. However, despite the benefits that online education offers, there are still some segments in the education sector facing adjustment challenges. Through the knowledge of our distinguished speakers today, this topic will help us discover the innovative ways of learning and how learning can be developed for the future of education. As a response to the rising challenges and issues brought by COVID-19, ABAC Philippines, in partnership with Globe, is pleased to present the ABAC Philippines Forum, a series of private-public discussions aimed at tackling critical issues with experts and leaders from the Philippines and the Asia-Pacific region. Let me just say a few words about APEC Business Advisory Council, or ABAC. ABAC is a private sector body within the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Area, or APEC, composed of senior business executives appointed by each of our respective leaders, meaning the presidents and the prime ministers of each of our economies. As the country representative, we are tasked to provide private sector perspectives on certain issues such as trade and investment, financial inclusion, digital innovation, and many more topics. Through this forum, we hope universities and schools can learn from our speakers to strategize better for what lies ahead. In this time of crisis, we need to prepare ourselves for the future. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed today's event.
Thank you, Bill, for that welcome remarks. Today, we will be featuring speakers from notable universities in the Philippines and Australia to provide us with examples on how their education systems were able to adapt to the new normal and the pandemic. With BNILD's advocacy for borderless education and RMIT's online-enabled curriculum, these universities will present their university strategies and plans for the upcoming academic year. To provide a local example, our first presenter today is President of De La Salle College of St. Benilde, Brother Edmundo Fernandez. He is also the President of De La Salle Green Hills and Director of the Academy of St. John and St. Francis Academy. He served as provincial for the De La Salle Brothers Lasallian East District from 2009 to 2011. With his dedicated service for the Lasallian Brothers over the years, he took on major roles as president of LaSalle schools across the Philippines. He is also known for his dedicated passion for the arts and is currently a board member of the LaSalle College of the Arts in Singapore. Following Brother Fernandez today to provide an international perspective and expound further on its online-enabled curriculum is Peter Ryan, the Executive Dean in the Vocational School of Engineering, Health and Sciences from RMIT University, Australia. He has held executive roles in training and education for 27 years in Australia and other countries. He led Australia's Technical and Further Education, a government-run system that provides vocational courses to upskill students. He also managed training for large retail and engineering companies across the Asia and Pacific and the Middle East. We will be holding an open forum where your questions will be answered and queued in the Q&A chat box. So please hold on to your questions then. So without much further, together, let us all welcome Brother Edmundo Fernandez. Brother?
Thank you very much, love. I'll share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, brother, we can.
All right, good. Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'll begin my presentation by sharing a few things about our school, about Benilde. De La Salle College of St. Benilde is 32 years old, began in 1988. Our enrollment last year was about 9,000. We have two campuses, the one in Manila and a newly established campus in Antipolo. And we are a member of the network of De La Salle schools in the Philippines. Our ethos is a spirit of faith and zeal and service for communion. We are part of a big worldwide network of 65 universities and colleges and 92 schools across 80 countries. Benilde actually began as a night school for working students, mostly from De La Salle University. And we've grown much since then. We were granted autonomous status last year, and our hotel, restaurant, and institution school is the only hotel school in the Philippines to hold level 4 status and is also a CHED Center for Excellence. We are also a distinguished Apple school. Benilde Manila has 27 undergraduate programs and 3 master's programs. In Benilde Antipolo, we only have 7 programs, and we started a new school, Benilde Deaf School. This is separate from our college School of Deaf Education and Applied Studies. So we're into grade 7 and 8 now, and we're hoping to make it into a full-blown deaf school for K to 12. We have 7 schools in Benilde, Manila. Deaf Education and Applied Studies, Design and Arts, which is now our biggest in terms of enrollment, School of Diplomacy and Governance, School of Hotel, Restaurant, and Institution Management, School of Management and Information Technology, School of Professional and Continuing Education, and School of Multidisciplinary Studies. Our vision is to build a just and humane society, being at the forefront of innovative education that is accessible, hopefully, to the poor and the diversely gifted learners. We have 2 big thrusts in Benilde. One is innovation, and the other is inclusion. Our teachers are mostly industry practitioners, and that allows them to bring cutting-edge knowledge into the classroom. And second is inclusion. We always target actually 15 to 20% of our student population as full scholar equivalents. Let me begin by answering 3 general questions that were given to me. What are the challenges faced by educational institutions in the Philippines as they respond to COVID-19 pandemic? I think most school heads will tell you that it's connectivity. But I'd like to put a finer point to that. Data shows that 70% of households in the Philippines are connected. But I think the issue also is reliability of connections. Even here in school, sometimes connections are unreliable and very difficult to, it's spotty. So I can imagine how it is as you go outside of Metro Manila. The other issue of connectivity is bandwidth. So if the teacher has a larger bandwidth than the student, that creates problems. If he embeds videos and other applications that are heavy in data and bandwidth, that will be a bit of a problem. The other challenge is availability and of hardware and the kind of hardware that's used. I know some people in the Department of Education, and they're having to struggle with this. They're using, it's surprising, we have a school in ABAC in Bataan, and when we made a survey as to who wanted to go online and who wanted to avail of modules, about 85% decided to go online. So that's very interesting. The other challenge is preparedness of students, teachers, and parents. The word for the last 3 months for teachers is retooling. So most schools have been undergoing a lot of workshops and seminars on how to do online classes. In LaSalle Green Hills, which I also accompany, we did simulations before we opened July 20, a month before July 20. And what we found out was it was really the parents who were unprepared. So it was a good thing that we did the simulations, and it helped the parents understand what online learning is all about. I mentioned retooling of teachers earlier. It's not just the skills, but it's also the mindset, including the proper understanding of the possibilities of online modality. I think part of the shift is making teachers understand that they cannot transfer classroom teaching into online modality, because online modality presents, it's very different. It has its own advantages, but it also has its own disadvantages. What lessons can educational institutions draw from this pandemic? No one was prepared for the magnitude of the effect of COVID-19. But I think it's very clear that what it teaches us is to be prepared in as many ways and as possible. I think it's important also that we understand that what the pandemic has taught us is for us to be agile and for us to have the quick ability to pivot and to transition. What are the opportunities for the education sector as we enter new normal? As one business writer said, the walls are softer in the pandemic. Change is easier to do. And I'd like to think also that there are less distractions because you don't have students coming to school, you don't have discipline problems to deal with in the classroom, etc. So it's a good time for me, if you ask me, to reassess, to review the identity of the school, to review the curriculum, the practices, the processes, and the systems. I think education, everybody says this, will be changed quite dramatically. Even as we emerge from the pandemic, education will have to be very different. I think it will be a mix of online and face-to-face. I believe that there is still value to face-to-face engagement. And also the second is to implement the important and needed changes that schools and educational institutions need. I'd like to go to the specific questions that was given to me on BNILD. How has BNILD responded and adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic? When lockdown was announced, we were 9 weeks into our second term, and we had about 5 weeks left, 4 weeks of classwork and about a week of exams. We still went full online, but with relaxed requirements. We mandated a revision of requirements into one final submission on learning outcomes. So some decided to have just one paper, some decided to have just one project, but we relaxed requirements and we allowed the teachers we gave them a lot of leeway. So we gave faculty a lot of leeway in conducting their online classes. Most were asynchronous than synchronous. Having said that, a lot of our teachers were newbies on conducting online. And that was a bit of a struggle as we tried to finish the second term in April. It helped that we had a learning management system called Benilde Big Sky, of which I will speak a bit more in a while. We implemented Benilde online learning term in July 1, and it will end at the end of August. What is BOLT and how is Benilde preparing students and educators for this? BOLT took the place of our third term. Normally, our third term begins in May and ends in August. But we began BOLT in July. What it is it's meant to transition Benilde actually to our first term in September, first term of next school year. It was voluntary. We conducted a survey on readiness at this was around April. And so the pandemic was new, we were reeling from the shock of it, and we realized only about 25 to 30% of our population was ready for online. And so that was the reason we decided to keep it voluntary. Our BOLT program is 8 weeks out of the normally 15 to 16 weeks. It began in July instead of May, and it's going to end of August. We only offer 243 courses out of the normally 700 that we offer. We were projecting for BOLT, we were projecting 30-35% of third term population of last school year. That was about 2,700. But we got 60%, so we were happy with that. So that was a good development. What does Benilde's borderless education mean and look like? The branding Benilde Borderless Education came when we launched our learning management system in 2016, Benilde Big Sky. What it basically does is it advocates and encourages the use of digital technologies to support different methodologies and pedagogies of teachers. It tries to help make teachers a bit more creative online. It worked well during class suspensions, storms, national holidays. But now we were glad we had it because now we use it a lot, and it's the basis of our online program. A good learning management system should be able, among others, to upload content, embed videos, conduct assignments, have discussion forums, conduct quizzes and tests, have a grading management system integrated to the student information system and integrated to the library system, etc., etc. How will BOLT cater to the different learning needs, especially for Benilde's deaf students? I always tell our teachers, both here in LaSalle Green Hills and in College of St. Benilde, that online modality presents endless possibilities for a personalized approach to pedagogy. It allows a teacher, in fact, to focus, especially if his sessions are asynchronous. It allows teachers to focus on those with learning disabilities or those who need to deepen content or those who need to deepen skills. It's hard for teachers to understand that at the moment, but I hope as we go through the online classes, I hope they begin to see the endless possibilities of online modality. Our School of Deaf and Applied Studies has its own digital learning teachers, which means they've been experts for the past 2 or 3 years, and they help our regular deaf teachers. We also provide interpreting insets in their classes. The nice thing about Benilde, because of its program like production design, music production, is that these programs are helping the other programs create videos and create material for their classes. So it was really, we were scrambling in April, May, and June to come up with videos, and we're still doing it for the teachers. How can the quality of online learning be further improved? I think this is my last slide. be further improved and sustained for educational institutions. I think the first few months of 2020, 2021, when schools open, will be a huge learning experience for all. It may be painful for some schools. Some parents may realize that, you know, I'm not getting my money's worth. But as I said, part of the accompaniment of the parents is really for them to realize that online modality is very, very different from classroom face-to-face modality. And I think as educators, part of our role is to make them understand that, to make them realize that online learning has its own advantages and possibilities. One of the things we have put in our program is a regular feedback mechanism from all sectors. The good thing about the simulation in the Salvinius was we were able to get good feedback from parents, from our teachers, and even from the students themselves. It helped them prepare as we opened in July 20. So I think between now and, you know, as the year progresses, there should be constant feedbacking between parents, between students, between the school and the teachers. It would be nice also if our associations and educational organizations in the country can come together and share best practices. I am sure there are many schools there that are creative and that do a lot of out of the box thinking in terms of trying to respond to COVID-19 and the limitations that it gives us. For example, I know that Ateneo, for those who can't do online, give thumb drives, send thumb drives to their students, and the materials are there. In some public schools, they send out modules, written modules, and then that's submitted at the end of the week. So there are many different ways of handling the limitations that COVID-19 has presented, but it would really be nice if at a certain point, maybe sometime November or December, that, you know, educational associations can organize schools to come together to share best practices. I'll end there, and I hope I was able to share something that would have helped you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Ed. Ed, may I call you Ed?
Yes, yes, please. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Ed, for that excellent and hopeful presentation or sharing. You know, usually when you think about crises, you think about the negative stuff and all the challenges, and you really did show that in your institution that you were able to be creative about the solutions. You, if I may just share my 3 takeaways. First is just an expansion of the metaphor you shared earlier about walls being soft. I think they're, from your sharing, they're not just soft, they're actually porous, right?
Yes.
many so because then you were able to give that leeway to your faculty, to your staff, to your students, to really address very individualized learning needs. Also the importance of information and feedback mechanisms. You know, just being able to really assess what are the resources that are available, what is the level of readiness, and then being able to respond very proactively based on that information. And then really, I think the main opportunity for online ed, or the main opportunity that COVID has presented us is really this opportunity for differentiated and personalized learning experience for our students, especially those students with special learning needs. So I will stop there. I will now turn over the floor to Dr. Peter Ryan, who will give his sharing with us this afternoon. Thank you. Dr. Ryan, on to you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for your time today, and it's just absolutely fantastic for me to be here today to address this forum. And I'd like to say how informative Brother Ed was. It was absolutely sensational. So great to hear what's happening in the Philippines at the moment. This is a very difficult time, and I think we all understand that the COVID pandemic has had significant impact around the world, but more so in education, if anything, because of the fact that education is all about being very close and tactile with students, which has impacted our whole regime about how we operate. Next slide, thanks. I just want to tell you a little bit about RMIT. RMIT was founded in 1887. It was seen as the working man's college, and it was traditionally built on vocational education. 5 campuses in Australia and Vietnam, 91,000 students at the moment, of which 40.6% are international. So the COVID pandemic has had an enormous impact on our student flow this year because of the closure of borders. Established as a public university in 1992, we have 3 major colleges, 17 schools. We have exchange partnerships across 40 countries. And in 2001, RMIT was invited by the Vietnamese government, and we established 2 campuses, one in Hanoi and one in Ho Chi Minh. A significant part of RMIT is we are very, very focused on business education, health and science, the arts, social science, and probably our mainstay is engineering. Next slide, thanks. Our locations, once again, 3 in Melbourne, 2 campuses in Vietnam, a research industry and global experience centre in Barcelona, Spain, and with many partners across the globe, including teaching partnerships in Singapore, China, Hong Kong, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia. And a significant part of what we do is commercial activity aligned to not just qualifications, but to micro qualifications within industry sectors. Next slide, please. The colleges we have, which are quite interesting. Each college is the size of most universities in themselves. So we have business, which is accounting, business, IT, economics, graduate law, management, and vocational business education, which includes a legal practice centre where students get the opportunity to practice and learn in a real life environment in the legal and accounting industries. Design and social context around architecture, design. Architecture and design we are probably one of the strongest colleges in Australia around design and architecture, which dovetails into building construction and civil engineering. Education, fashion, textiles, media, comms, property and construction, once again, vocational education. Science, engineering and health is where I've spent most of my life, which is around engineering, health, bioscience, pharmaceutical science, vocational engineering, which includes IT, science, nursing, dental, chiropractic, pharmacy, civil engineering, electrical, chemical, aviation and flight. And just by going through that, you will see very clearly that quite a lot of the areas that RMIT is paramount in delivering, most of this has got a very firm component of practical application, which makes this whole COVID situation even more difficult. Next slide, please. The School of Vocational Business is a suite of solutions that provide to assist industry and individuals reach their full potential in the business and legal sector. The School of Design Social Context works very, very closely in aged care and in social services. And the School of Vocational Engineering has a very strong focus around technical application of engineering, but also a very strong component of nursing and dental and laboratory technology. And as you can understand, all of those areas are all very much practical, hands-on type activities, which has challenged us incredibly around how we deliver in this COVID situation. Next slide, thanks. I've got a slide here called Return to Campus. Because when we first shut down on March 23, we've actually come back on campus again. So I know just listening to Brother Ed before and to some of the other people in this forum that you're preparing for what is a massive restart of the school system. So at RMIT, we've been closed and we've started again, and then we've had to close parts down at certain times due to expansion in the infection rate. But we've been able to keep most of our technical hands-on areas operational. Our nursing and trade students returned to campus to complete practical assessments that could not be completed online. And it's very important. And this slide shows the nursing facility, and I would just heighten your awareness to seeing the students there with the simulated patients where they're practicing social distancing. So most of our nursing classes have now gone from around about 15 students in one area to about 4 to 5. So as you can imagine, that has significant impact on the number of students you need, the number of facility and space you need, and also the number of teachers you need. And I'm happy to take questions on that later, but I would say the shortage of teachers is probably going to be one of the biggest issues with this because of the distancing problem. And with 90% of a lot of vocational education being face-to-face, this now creates a massive problem for how we actually deliver this. So what we've done is we've moved all of our support services away from the university. They're off-site, we're operating from home, and we're delivering a much more scaled back service back on campus. Next slide, thank you. So our nursing programs are approximately 60% practical, 40% theory. Engineering is 60% prac, 40% theory. Our dental programs, which is very unique to RMIT, we are 70% practical and 30% theory. You can understand with the sheer nature of dental, where you've got students doing checks on people's mouths, that the dental program has probably been impacted the most at the moment. It's been incredibly difficult to do any practical work at all with these students. Next slide, please. Our business programs are 50% practical or industry project work and 50% theory. So that has made it a little bit easier. One thing I'd like to say is one of the things, although it has become very difficult, and I was talking to Bill before about this, it has become very difficult to operate, that we have a whole suite of micro-credentials where we've been able to offer small, compact delivery mechanisms to support some qualifications so that the micro-cred builds on part of a qualification and part of the qualification builds on the bigger picture. So they've been an exceptionally valuable tool for us to have in this particular situation. Next slide, thank you. So from March 23, what happened? We were forced to suspend all traditional classes on campus. We moved all platforms to digital. So within 1 week, we went from 90% campus-based to 99% online. And we did that because most of our programs were already allocated to Canvas. So we use Canvas as our platform. So all of our delivery, our assessment methodology, our assessment templates, everything was already in Canvas. So all we had to do was open it up. So we had a big advantage. All management and administration processes went remote, immediate shift from traditional lectures and tutors online. And for vocational, a significant amount of learning and enhancement was disconnected because of this. No practical assessments, which I've talked about. Next slide, thanks. Steps to flexible delivery. We had rapid transformation within days. We assessed what could be delivered and what couldn't. This supported decision-making. We had action plans. We assessed our programs and we were able to work out very quickly within a week what could be delivered online and what couldn't. But as I said before, the secret to that was having Canvas and everything visible online. So even working at home, people could then interface with the learning material because it was just like being back in their office. And there was ongoing support and support with delivery and enhancement of learning materials back at home from people who were working from home as well. So all of our services still work. All of our services still support our staff, although they're delivering at home via iCollaborate and by Teams. Next slide, please. Support mechanism, one-on-one mentoring and elbow support for teachers, collaborative support with learning and teaching staff in the school, guidance materials, videos and templates, broad range of professional development options. Next slide. Ensuring quality, which is a big issue. We had to make sure that the quality confirmation process against agreed benchmarks. Feedback from teaching staff on quality on their online delivery. Alignment back to support options. Student feedback surveys. And an interesting thing, and Brother Ed mentioned it earlier about, and I think Bill did as well, as about satisfaction, that at the moment our student satisfaction in the university is actually higher now online than what it was previously, which is quite interesting. We do have some people who are, I'd have to say, completely disconnected, that do not want to study anymore because of the online environment. But I would say a greater percentage of students are very happy with what they're doing. And obviously we're doing teacher self-assessment as we go along to make sure everything's working. Next slide, thanks. Where are we now? We're delivering classes online through Microsoft Teams, Echo 360 and Collaborate Ultra. The student experience is guided, as I said, through Canvas, and formative and summative assessments are submitted through Canvas. So Canvas really is the cornerstone of our operation. Next slide. What does the future look like? This is a really good slide, and I've left it to the end. What does the future look like? We've developed sophisticated online systems, approaches to student support and distance education. It is working, and it's working really well. Technology will assist with support of practical assignments in the workplace. The practical assignments, as Bill mentioned and Brother Ed, is the key risk at the moment, and we are delivering back on site, but with face coverings, shields, students at greater distances, temperature checking people, making sure that we have accurate lists of people coming in, so if there's an infection, we know how to trace and segregate those group of students. It is very intensive and very stressful for our staff. I assure you of that. People are very worried about their own personal safety while they're actually teaching in a practical environment. Simulation alternative assessment practices are used. Reliance on workshop laboratories and technical equipment will become less, as we know. Industry partnerships are and will support many practical learning activities. We will continue to expand online. We have no option. We will continue to reinforce and strengthen our online presence. There'll be more off-site management. In matter of fact, I'd say most people from the university will not come back on site till probably 2021. It has completely changed our use of office space. And I know this would be no different in the Philippines, where the value of office space now has become far less than what it ever did before because people are at home. It is a huge focus on how we get practical classes delivered. And I think we've met the challenge on meeting practical classes and are delivering the results that are required at the moment for our students. The question I would probably pose to everyone in the audience as I finish this presentation, and I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions, is will it ever be the same again? Will the education system and indeed the university sector ever be the same again? I think vocational education will certainly change. I think we will go to more online for theory and knowledge base, and practical will always be back on site. But I can see the university sector will move more and more and more away from campus-based activity back to, or move to, I should say, online activity. And I think that's already started. Look, thank you for your time. I look forward to answering any of your questions. And love, it's been a delight for me to be here, and I really appreciate how welcome you've made me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Peter, for that excellent presentation. I learned so much. I'm really curious as to what are the thresholds when you decide to open, close your facilities, something that we are grappling with as we also think about how to reopen our schools. And so, yeah, no, I think that particular insight will probably come out during the open forum, which now leads me to the open forum part of our program. Once again, thank you very much to our speakers for those insightful presentations, Brother Ed and Peter. To our participants, you may type in your questions at the Q&A chat box. But if you wish to ask your question live, you may also click the raise hand button. And I will say your name and the staffer will cue you and ask you to unmute your microphone. And you may also choose to turn on your video if you want. Okay, given that, let me, before I go to the questions, for Brother Ed and Peter, was there something that you wanted to say but you ran out of time, and so this is your chance to just maybe, you know, give one other thought that you missed in your presentation? Oh yeah, Peter has one. Okay, yes, Peter.
Yeah, look, love, thank you for that. You mentioned something just then, and I'll probably need to qualify it. We are back on campus delivering, but under very strict regulations from the National Health Authority. So our numbers of students fluctuate according to the infection rates in certain regions. So we manage those student numbers on a weekly basis around infection rates.
Okay, well, cool. Thank you for that clarification. Brother Ed, did you want to have or a thought that you wanted to share?
I'm good, love. I'll wait for the questions.
All right. Okay. From an anonymous attendee. So I guess this person does not want to be acknowledged. For Brother Ed, will you have to modify your grading system considering that the system was based on a face-to-face setting?
Actually, that's a good question because we're discussing that right now. We're tending towards keeping our normal grading system because the learning outcomes will be the same. But when we did online right after the pandemic, we did have several, we did change our grading system into, we included incomplete, we included remediation and withdrawal, which we don't normally do. But we're not doing that for both. And at the moment, we're not thinking of doing that for our regular first term.
I see. So this is for those existing students, brother, who's
no, it was for at the beginning of the pandemic when there was a huge clamor to actually have mass promotion. We actually resisted the pressure to do mass promotion because some schools did in the country. But that was because we had already 9 weeks and we had already a clear assessment that we could do for the students.
Right. You had enough basis to already give a sufficient assessment.
That's right.
I see. But I guess if I may extrapolate further on that particular question, I guess for Brother Ed and Peter as well, what's the conversation like in dealing with, you know, grading? Because assessment is such a big quality assurance mechanism. So, and that's, I think, one criticism of online education, right? How do you actually know that it is that person learning all these things and taking all these assessments? So just curious, I guess, as to how you're thinking about assessments. Peter said something about it in his slides. Maybe Peter would like to go first and then Brother.
Sure.
Yeah, look, thanks again, love. Look, I think we have moved, we're sticking very closely to practical demonstration of skills. And I think as Bill and Brother Ed have said, I mean, realistically, that is the ultimate test that people can actually do the job, particularly around nursing, dental, health related. But there is a number of areas where we're moving to online video participation around evidence out in the workplace and in industry, where they can send in evidence of a particular task that they are completing under supervision so that we can see the delivery remotely. But I would suggest that is not the preferred option, but it is an option at the moment, providing you can maintain the compliance and the integrity of the filming to make sure that it is actually factual.
Right, and it's not photoshopped or edited very heavily. Okay,
Correct.
okay. Brother?
Yeah, pretty much the same. In fact, we're trying to do away with tests and quizzes, and we're trying to move more towards projects and output, clear output. Having said that, we can never. It's very difficult to see whether it's really the student's own output, especially for the lower grades. In fact, the joke is the parent is now the classmate. You know, the parent is now part of the class. So it's really a learning process for everyone, and we're hoping that, of course, people will be a bit more honest. So yeah.
There's you really do sound like a religious brother. A lot of trust going into that answer. Thank you. I wanna see if Cell had a couple of delivery type questions. So rather than reading all of her questions, maybe she would like to ask her question live. Cell, would you like, for the secretariat, has she been unmuted? Oh, I think I see her. Cell. No? Okay. Oh, okay. Yes, there you go. Her hand is, oh no, that is someone else. Oh, okay, sorry. All right, no, why don't I just read them, because and then group them. So there's some delivery type questions. One on technology. What do you do about weak internet signals, connectivity, no access to learning devices? I think there's someone else who asked that particular question as well. So that's one, in terms of the actual infrastructure or the hardware required to deliver remote learning. And then there's also a question on the people behind the learning. So what is, how would you do teacher training, ratio to teachers and students in terms of ratio? And then finally, in terms, also in terms of the people, there's also like a question on how to work with parents. And then lastly, in terms of timeline, when you plan for your respective educational institutions, what timeline are you looking at? Is it, like when a vaccine comes, you're now gonna consider face-to-face, or is this like an online thing or virtual school altogether? So in terms of infrastructure or hardware, in terms of people, and then just in terms of timeline, who would like to start? Yes, brother. And then Peter.
Those are several questions. I'd like to answer the first question of what do we do with the weak connections. That's a serious issue in the Philippines, and there will be a lot, even those who are based in Manila. Having said that, we do make a survey, and that's where, in fact, personalized instruction comes in. Personalized, because then you say, okay, these people will need a different way of learning. And that's where we'll have to think of creative ways like doing modules or sending thumb drives. So we can't leave them behind. We can't say, sorry, you're not connected. You can't participate. So that's where, and we try to do that as much as possible. Yeah, that's my
okay answer. On the connectivity, thanks brother. Sorry, I kind of like lumped everything because Cell had like a lot of questions, and I just wanted to make sure that I got it all covered.
Can I answer one also that I remember in terms of timeline? For us, I think we're thinking that this next whole school year will be online, even if the Department of Education says we're good to have face-to-face, that's going to be extremely stressful, both for parents and for us as well. And no matter how hard we keep our campuses safe, if the transmission happens outside, let's say they're traveling, public transport, and they come in and you're safe. I mean, you do everything, all the protocols. But if they get infected outside and they infect you, so it's very difficult. So it's easier to say that we will be online for the whole school year. Although
Okay.
I
Yes.
must say that we're not close to the idea of having students come to school face to face. We'll see
Should
how
the
it pans.
situation allow?
That is
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter, would you say that you're also working on a similar timeline as Brother Ed and Binil?
Yeah, look, I think, and I mentioned in my presentation, if you go to teacher training, one of the things that we're doing at the moment is we're upgrading and teaching our trainers and our teachers at home. So we're running Teams-based Microsoft Teams-based approaches where we've got classes online with our teachers to upgrade them around technology. That's happening every day. But to go to your final question about the timelines, I would suggest, and this is only my view right at the moment, but I think COVID is going to change the university sector permanently. I think there is a great realisation, and having very expensive buildings and high value real estate is now becoming in some ways burdensome, because the fact is that you can't fill them with students because they're not there.
Right.
So I can see it in Melbourne now and across the university sector in Australia that there is definitely going to be a lot more emphasis post the pandemic to stay online and to be able to offer. There's a lot of advantages to universities, because a university like Australia will be able to, in RMIT, will be able to move their courses all around the world far easier than they could before. So I think there will be permanent changes, I think. That's all. I'm not sure exactly how much, but I think there will be permanent changes.
Wow, interesting. So not just for the next academic year, but it might be the quote unquote better normal for.
I think it. Look,
for
I'm not. I think in areas like nursing, certainly in chemistry, in very, very high risk hands-on areas, I think that will continue. But the thing I think that will change is very theoretical based programs will have a lot more delivered online than in campus, which will change the whole direction, certainly of RMIT with our student population.
Okay.
And I don't think
Yes.
anyone sees it. I don't think anyone sees it changing, even if the pandemic stopped completely at the end of this year. I don't think anyone sees it just springing back.
Yeah. Would you say Brother Ed, you wanted to react to what Peter shared?
Yes, I agree. I agree with Peter. I think it will have a huge impact on the educational system worldwide. And I agree with him that theory-based lecture type of classes will be mostly online. But I also see that coming to campus, coming to school, especially for the lower grades, for elementary and secondary, I think there's still value, because socialization, I think, will be important. Meaningful engagement with their own peers will be important. But I'd like to add, in Benil, we're having difficulty in thinking how to replicate online laboratory classes, for example, culinary arts. It's so, and in fact, what we're trying, there's a big discussion in the administration whether to push it back or to think of ways of how to do it online, because you have to cook, and you have to, the chef has to see how you cook, etc. And the same with other, let's say, dance. You have a program on dance, and it's very hard to have an online dance class. So those are the things that we're having to grapple with. I think part of the conversation, Love, is that for us, when this finishes, people will realize, oh, there's a lot of value to online classes. So what will make them come to school? And that's a conversation. So at least for primary and secondary, we're thinking, if you have state-of-the-art laboratories, science laboratories, culinary arts laboratories that can't be replicated at home, that's one way of having them come to campus. So those are the things we're having to grapple with now. I can imagine dentistry, which is very hands-on.
Yeah.
So in medicine, I would imagine would be the same.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, education is a lot about it is very experiential, right? And then, I mean, you would normally they'd say it's like kindergarten, that's more experiential, kids like to play, etc. But I think even for highly technical fields, right, like nursing, and even just mechatronics or engineering, you need to experience that. And plus, like, just the environment of your peers, or being with your peers, also like how to kind of replicate that experience, or simulate that particular experiential aspect of education, which actually leads me to a question that's being asked here. And both of you mentioned a learning management system, so Canvas for RMIT and Big Sky for Benilde. Could you tell us a bit more about your respective learning management systems, and how is it being used as a student's experience guide, and also maybe as an assessment tool? But I think particularly for that particular experiential aspect of education. Who'd like to start, Peter or Peter this
I
time?
can
Yes,
start.
Peter
Yeah.
this time. Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at the approach at RMIT, basically for a student, they have the opportunity to go online and learn all about the unit that they're going to study. So the whole overview of the unit, the assessment process, how many weeks it will go for, how many hours, etc. So it's like a very high level timetable. Then all of the notes, all of the slides, and the assessments are published aligned to the timetable activity. So students at any time through that process can look at what they've got to study. They can look at assessment material, etc., and what is going to be the expectation. And then the teaching staff then come online onto the Canvas platform, deliver the theory-based lesson, and utilise the material off Canvas and align the students to the assessments as they go through the process. And part of that is obviously the compliance component for us, which is around recording attendance, recording pass, fail in short quizzes, etc. And then being able to update all that information back into our LMS, so we've got a record of activity at all times. So you could say our Canvas system is a total front to back approach to the whole learning experience and contains all of the information. Just to give you some idea as well, the university has 14 quality assurance steps on any unit that is put onto Canvas. So there is quality assurance steps around quality indicators all of the way through the learning, so that and someone external views the quality indicators. So you could submit your material, but it could fail quality. So it has to go back and be done again. So there's only programs that meet the 14 steps that get launched, that get delivered to the students. So it works well.
Yeah, actually, I've used Canvas before, and brother mentioned this in his presentation, that most of the learning happens asynchronously. With Canvas, it, at least from my experience, it was kind of similar to that. But you talked about a lot of assessments, quality assurance. What would you say is the user experience of your students of Canvas? Is it also to encourage more asynchronous type instruction and learning, or more synchronous, aligned with your assessments? Yeah.
Look, what I would suggest, and this is probably the best way to say it, people, the higher the level they are studying in the university, I would say on average, the better the acceptance. The lower the educational level of the people entering into Canvas, the more difficult they experience. And they would like to have more traditional methods. They don't like it. But people who have got some exposure to online learning and some exposure to education in general, they love it. They like it very much. But I would say, you know, some of our people who are in very manual type learning, they do not like it. And we've had students that have dropped out and said, I don't want to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'd say, but in general, I would say the percentage would be very high for acceptance, but it does have drop. It does have people that leave.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Yes, brother.
Peter mentioned earlier when he was talking about Canvas that it's central to their whole online modality, and I think an LMS is it's like the ground on which everything happens in an online.
Yeah.
It's the space on which everything happens. Assignments, everything. You put all your content there. You have discussions happening there. So that's how crucial it is. And I understand that we were blessed, no, that we did have an LMS when this happened. So some schools had to scramble to get an LMS. No, Canvas is a very good one. There's Blackboard. Actually, Benilde is using Brightspace, but we've renamed it Benilde Big Sky. One of the things I want to mention, as you go higher from elementary, lower grades, junior high school, senior high school, the more asynchronous classes can be, because then our experience is in the lower grades, the parents want to see that their kids are engaged by the teacher. It's like, hey, I paid 100,000. I want you to teach my kid online. But as you go higher, in Benilde, we're more asynchronous than we are synchronous, a lot more. And in LaSalle Green Hills, as we go to junior high school and senior high school, we are more asynchronous than the lower grades. So it also caters to independent learners, what Peter was saying about those who are highly educated, because then you leave them a lot of independence. And in fact, that's good, because you just give them certain readings and certain questions and certain work, and they do it in their own time. So independent learners will thrive in online learning. Whereas those who want to be spoon-fed, those are the ones that are going to have problems with online learning, because then they don't, they don't want to do anything on their own because they want to be spoon-fed.
No, yeah, it definitely, like especially now, there's this whole question, right? Who is ultimately responsible for your learning? Is it you? Is it your teacher or your parents? Something that I think educators are are trying to find an answer to that. But I think especially when your learning management system encourages or incentivizes independent learning, it's the onus is really on the student, right, to be responsible for their learning. So maybe
even when I was a student, teachers were already talked about as facilitators of learning. This is so true now, because they can't, the kids, they have the internet at their disposal at home. So the teachers now really just facilitate understanding and learning for the student.
So let me go now to, I guess, teachers, right? And the and their role now. So you mentioned, brother, like even during your time, the roles of teachers have changed already. I think even more so now, right? Where there's really a lot of asynchronous learning experience happening. So two-part question when it comes to the teachers. What kind of teacher will thrive in this new learning environment? And then what sort of support should educational institutions give them to help them get there, right? So to get to that particular ideal type of teacher who will be successful in this new learning environment. Would like to, okay, brother.
Okay.
Yes.
Usually the younger the teacher, the easier it is for him or her to go into online, because he's sophisticated, he understands. Our more senior teachers have a difficult time. In general, so we've had to accompany the more senior ones towards accepting and embracing online. What kind of support do we give them? Most of them are at home doing online classes. So they've asked for subsidy for their internet, and I think we've given that. But we do encourage them, if the government allows, when it's in GCQ, when the lockdown is more relaxed, to come to school and use the facilities in school. We've loaned them laptops. We've given them, so we tried to help them as much as possible in terms of hardware. So, and of course, training. We've been training them. Benilde has done about three sessions of 2-3 weeks each for our faculty.
Wow, that's amazing. Would you say, brother, because it seems like from your presentation, you know, Benilde was almost like very well placed in this particular crisis. And actually, there was one who said, well, actually a couple who said, kudos, kudos Benilde, kudos brother Ed. Would pre-COVID, what is the percentage of your faculty who were ready? And I guess, like, how fast did you have to, like, you know, make sure that everyone caught on to this new requirement?
Actually, love, I must say it was not very much, and the only blessing, I think, and the only real preparation that helped us was really our LMS, our Benilde Gift Guide. There was a certain but small percentage of our faculty using it well, but now everybody has to use it. So they've had a huge learning curve in trying to understand how to use it well. So we really also had some difficulties and some glitches.
Yeah, but I guess I mean, connected to your point on age, it's maybe more the willingness to learn new technologies, and yeah, and the adeptness. Peter, what's your take on the question on what type of teachers would thrive or be successful in this new learning environment, and what kind of support should educational institutions provide to help them get there?
Yeah. No, look, that's a very good question. I think it's quite amazing. Brother Ed and I are very much aligned all the way through here, which is interesting. Look, I think to generalize, and I do hate to generalize, but to generalize, the age component is a factor, as Brother Ed said. The older our teachers are, usually the more difficult they find this transition across to Corona learning. And it's not just about the technology, it's about, as Brother Ed mentioned very earlier, a lot of people come to work, not just to work, but they come for the social interaction, and they haven't got that now.
Right.
So particularly a lot of the older people are struggling with being at home. So that's one issue. And I would very clearly call it out that certainly in Australia at the moment, that's probably one of the big social issues we've got, that people are not coping well with being at home away from work. So I think the age is a problem. I think certain areas seem to be more technically savvy than others. So particularly our engineering areas, no problems. Most of our health areas, but some of our lower grades, they struggle with that. So the university is doing a lot of work at the moment on upgrading qualifications of teachers and teaching them at home how to use the technology. So we're investing a lot of time, because some people are very disconnected from Canvas. Although they use it, they don't know how to upgrade qualifications. And as we go further through this process, they have to create new lessons and new material.
That's right.
And the ability to do that is it's a different set of skills than just delivering the training. So we're investing heavily into that. But I think I'd go back to what Brother Ed said before, that I don't want to make out that this is easy, because it's not. A lot of people do struggle with the technology.
Yeah.
It's a big problem. Everyone's got it.
So yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's important to highlight that realization, right? That, you know, we're all figuring things out as we go, which is quite difficult. So it's important to also look at our efforts with a lot of kindness. I would say. Sorry, I keep on talking about that, probably because my name is Love. So talking about values always, you know. Okay, so
Love, can I just say one other thing? I think what you just said is a very, very important point, that I think the kindness element And one of my favorite sayings is being hard on the problem and easy on the person. I think as we go through this pandemic, we need to focus even more on, be easy on the person, but hard on the problem, work together, collaborate, and together you will achieve it. But as a single identity, you'll fail. And that's definitely, a definite.
No, that definitely, Peter. I 100% agree. I'm aware of time. We only have about 4 minutes for the open forum, but I don't wanna. I want to ask two important questions, and I'd like to request both Brother Ed and Peter to maybe keep your answer short. The first one: how do we get parents to be really like active partners of of the learning of their children? And then how do we deal with students with special needs, so deaf, blind, maybe some learning difficulties? So parents and students with special needs. Peter?
Yeah, look, I'll keep it very brief. I think the key is communication with parents. One thing we've learnt at RMIT, you cannot over communicate in this situation. So the more you can share, the more you're going to benefit. With students with disabilities, the key thing we're doing there is putting a lot of resource into working one-on-one with those students to make sure that they feel integrated and not external from the university. But that's a tough one as well.
Mm-hmm. How about you, brother?
Yeah, same. I thought of the word over communicate because that's also what we've been saying. We cannot over communicate enough. But having said that, it's easy for the parents to be part of the process now because they're at home as well. So they actually meddle with their kids. Sometimes you could see parents at the side checking whether the teacher is there.
Hovering.
Yeah. For personalized needs, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the online program, the modality is really lends itself easily for us to be able to focus on individual needs and disabilities. So I'm hoping, having said that, again, the teachers are not attuned to that because their understanding is, I have 40 students in my class. So it's really a change of mindset.
Right. No, yeah, definitely. Okay. 2 minutes. So we will do rapid fire Q&A, just like in Miss Universe. So yes or no. There are many yes or no questions here. As you move to online modules, do you use the same contact time in face-to-face and online module? Yes, no. No. Okay. Do you get support from private sector, such as laptop donations, volunteer trainers, and maybe co-delivery of training? Yes, no.
Yes.
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 Okay. Also, when allowed, I know, sorry, this isn't a yes or no question. Is the thumb drive simply modules for the students to accomplish at home, or can it be for something else? Yes, no. Is it just simply delivery of modules? Maybe, or maybe it's a very difficult yes or no question.
Yes.
I will, I will change the question. Brother Ed, is Benilde looking for consultancy or technological solutions from other countries to enhance online learning for students?
We're trying to benchmark, yes, with other countries, yes.
Okay. Peter, are you accepting foreign students? Still, RMIT. I think I saw a question about that. Yes.
If they pass quarantine, yes.
Okay, so they need to quarantine. And then lastly, just to, I guess, wrap up the open forum. There are so many questions. I would like to volunteer that the secretariat bring them all together and maybe send them to you so that they can be shared to the participants of this forum. But before we close, one last message of hope to our education practitioners, partners, government policymakers who are here with us this afternoon. Who'd like to start?
I can, love. Look, I'll continue the theme that I mentioned before. I think we need to be kind to each other so that we can survive the total journey, because this is not, as we'd say, it's not a sprint, this is a marathon. And I think we need to work cohesively and collaboratively with regulators, health authorities, etc., to have a a holistic approach to developing an education strategy, not just isolated. Otherwise, we'll fail.
Thanks, Peter.
I,
Brother?
I think it's an exciting time for the education sector. I think there are so many possibilities that online learning can do, and it will change us forever, I think, for the better. So it's an exciting time. I hope we take on that that attitude, at least for educators.
Yeah. Time to be kind and excited at the same time. I completely agree with the both of you. Uh, Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for our discussion. I'm so sad. I could talk about education the whole afternoon or the whole day. For the rest of the pending questions, we will collate them and ask our speakers to try to answer them. May I remind all the participants to answer a survey form that you will be receiving as you exit the webinar. Participants who accomplish this will receive a certificate of completion. Before I turn over the floor, proverbial floor, to Mr. Beluz to wrap up this session and deliver the closing remarks, I would just like to thank the ABAC Philippines team for inviting me and Philippine Business for Education to be part of this really great panel discussion. And also, it has been lovely chatting with Brother Ed and Peter the past hour or so. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So with that, I'd like to call on Mr. Beluz for his closing remarks. Bill?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Love, and thank you to our speakers, Peter, and to Brother Edmund. No. First of all, it tells you something already when you hear Peter say, "Thank you for having him over here," because actually Peter's in Melbourne. But because of technology and because we've become so used to using technology that it's really like he were here with us, and that we are all together in the room, having this great spirited discussion on education. There are a lot of items that I took a lot of notes, and a lot of items I think that were that came up and would make a great summary. But I don't want to take too long. I'll just go with a few sort of key items I think that were important. One is starting with Brother Edmund's comment about the walls are softer, and I think that people are more open for change actually right now, and we see the change happening very, very quickly. That there are adjustments needed not only for students and for teachers, but for parents as well. I think for the educational sector, we see that learning management systems are important for educational institutions. Both LaSalle and RMIT had used extensively their learning management system. I like the optimism expressed here and the sense of hope that there are endless possibilities for learning and online modalities, but that the schools are also practical, that they take feedback quite regularly from their own students, no? And they continue to push all sorts of support mechanisms and ways of ensuring quality and within the school system, so that they maintain a certain high level of educational quality. I think an important insight here is that will it ever be the same again? I think the thinking from our speakers, and I suspect from many people, is that no, it won't be ever the same again. There will be permanent change, and probably change for the better. And it's going to be a combination of in-person plus online education, and I think we will be all the better for it. No, and the question on whether this year should we consider it virtual, and I think Brother Edmund has a very practical approach to this, which I think we should consider it virtual, because there are two, I think, preconditions before schools can really open up. One is that can we have testing? Because we don't know, as people come in from their homes, from their communities, we don't know whether they're spreading it or not. No? So I think that we'd have to have a very widespread testing regime in place. to be able to ensure that everyone is going to be safe. The second reality is that there really is very little or no public transportation available for students to get to school anyway. So I think that automatically cuts the potential or the possibility for people to actually get back to school. And then the part that the teachers become facilitators, and that's going to be sort of the new role of teachers. I do want to point out just three last items. One is that to make this all happen, online education, we're going to be needing infrastructure. And there was a question I noticed on the Q&A box about, what happens in places with poor signal. Well, the reason for poor signal has to do with the quantity of infrastructure that we have in place in the country. And the less infrastructure and the more people using it will just create congestion. So we've got to see to it that in our respective LGUs that we encourage more infrastructure build out, particularly that of cell sites, because without that, I don't think we're going to be able to get signal. Our ratio of users to cell site is quite high for ASEAN, and it's about 5 times what Vietnam has. So if you're wondering why the bandwidth is a bit slow and the speed is slow, it's because that we have so many users using all the same facilities. So we've got to really build out the facility. The one thing I guess is that we have before us a sort of a lockdown generation, I guess, of students, and will they come out of it better or worse? And I think that's going to be dependent on educators, on the students themselves, on the enabling environment, and on the parents. And there's a very good chance that they will come out actually better than we might expect. No? The only thing that I think will be tough to make up in all of this is, will we miss that so-called college experience or high school experience of hanging out with friends and making lifelong friends, no? Which is an important part of I think going to school. And doing this online is not quite the same as actually getting together with friends on a daily basis, or going out for drinks after, or doing projects together and pulling all-nighters. So that's going to be, I think, the big question in people's minds. Will we miss that so-called school experience? But so far, I think the signs look good that the educational quality can be maintained and improved going into online education if we have sort of maverick schools like LaSalle and RMIT, showing others what can be done. So with that, let me thank Peter for joining us from Melbourne, and Brother Edmund. Love, of course, great job. It's good to be a partner with PBED and to do something on education together with you. I'd like to thank also the audience. Great number of questions. We'll keep all the questions, and we'll try to send responses to all our participants. As usual, we do share presentations, and we'd like to thank you for spending at least part of your afternoon today with us. Thank you very much.